You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Moses Voss here from theChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for being here. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you but doesn't judge you. At least not as harshly as your mother-in-law, because she didn't like you anyway. She wanted her daughter to marry Bob. And Bob, went on to that stellar career of Silicon Valley VIP there, and she's regretted it ever since. But get on her good side. Refer to the Chris Voss Show. Tell her to go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, all those crazy places on the internet. And you know what? She might be happier with you or not. It's your problem. You created it. Anyway, we have an amazing author on the show. As always, we have the most brilliant minds who are going to share with you their journeys, their lessons of life, their ways that you can improve the quality of your life or else. I don't know what that means at the end there. But he's the author of the newest book that came out. It's called The Unstoppable Franchisee, 7 Drivers of Next Level Growth. Came out April 11th, 2023. Gary Prenevost is on the show with us today. We're going to be talking to him about his new book. Gary, did I get your name right?
You did. Thank you.
I just want to make sure. And there's a million miles between the green room and what goes on at the beginning of the show. So there you go. So Gary Prenevost will be joining us on the show. He is an amazing young gentleman, and he's going to be sharing his insights as well. He's a passionate entrepreneur, multi-unit franchisee, franchise search coach, and also author. And he's going to be talking to us about his data there. Well, we'll be editing that out. Gary is a passionate entrepreneur and lifelong learner, is a calculated risk taker who thrives on creating opportunity for others. He's constantly redefining his comfort zone while helping others to redefine their comfort zones and unlock their golden shackles that are holding them back from achieving their next level financial and lifestyle goals. Now, Gary's 30-plus years of experience in the Canadian franchising industry makes him an industry-leading and much sought-after consultant and expert. He's been on every side of the franchise business table, and he's bought single, multi-unit, and master franchises for himself, brought U.S. franchise concepts to Canada, and helped companies become franchisors and coach hundreds of entrepreneurs. For 10 years, he was involved in growing one of Canada's largest human skills training companies, eventually building it to over 100 licensed locations across Canada. He's done a lot there. Gary, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing awesome, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you as well, all the way from our favorite neighbor above us, the nice version of us, the Canada. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
The easiest place would be theunstoppablepfranchisee.com. All my services are there. The franchise matchmaking would be www.francnet.com/G Prenevost.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview of what you do there.
Oh boy. I've worked with over 2,000 people, Chris, on their journey to becoming self-employed through franchising. We work with hundreds of brands, and it's really helping people understand where their best use of talent and skills is, aligned with passion, and focusing on the right type of customers they want. So many people, as you're aware, there's a romance to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And franchising, people think is food and retail. That's a big part of it, but there's so much more that it's other areas. So we help people look at all the options. In my book, I talk about the achieving top performance, next level growth and top performance in franchise ownership. In any business, top performance only happens when somebody chooses the right business. Mm-hmm. When they get that, you can get the best business model and put somebody behind it who doesn't have the skills or isn't aligned with what the purpose and values of that business is, they're still going to flop.
Ah, there you go. Now, my understanding is franchising can be a better business than just making something out of whole cloth as an entrepreneur, because you're buying into a business model that usually has a proven success, and so you usually have a high proponent of success doing that than doing idiot things like I do, where I just make up businesses out of whole cloth and keep my fingers crossed and have to figure out the model that isn't being handed to me. Is that true?
Well, there's to a degree. When I think about franchising is a specialized form of distribution, and it is a growth acceleration model once somebody gets up to full stride, but they have to learn a whole lot of things, Chris, before they get to full stride. So when somebody buys a franchise, if it's a proven system, not all franchises are created equal. If it's a proven system, that's they focus on the learning curve in the short term. So it's a time compression strategy, because they're not doing a whole lot of experimenting and what you're just saying, building stuff from raw cloth. You got a lot of trial and error where the franchisor says, do these things, avoid these things. That gets them to learn the core elements of what it takes to run that type of business. Once they've got that foundation, then they can go into growth acceleration. The challenge is most people get stuck at different levels of growth, and that's why they plateau, whether it's franchised or not.
There you go. Yeah, it's, you can spend a decade trying to fix stuff. I mean, there's some companies that have. I mean, Twitter is one of the examples of that. I think they've still figured out how to work their business model. But, there's those lessons are painful and they're costly when you're trying to develop the business model. And I know the penchant for success is a lot higher with franchises. I guess it would vary depending upon the quality. But, if you get with somebody like McDonald's, I mean, they clearly know how to make, a setup successful. And I think a lot of maybe franchisees do. But yeah, trying to figure out that business model and make it work and have it, and having the drop in is so much easier. And plus, so franchisees can buy stuff and be more hands off than, say, an individual entrepreneur. There you go. we had the piano for effect at what I was saying there. There you go. And we'll have a snare drum next. So give us a little bit about your history as the author of the book. Tell us how you grew up. What influenced you to become an entrepreneur? What influenced you to get into the roads that you got into with franchising?
Well, I got my early career in banking. I was with one of Canada's big banks in the retail stream. I ended up becoming in the management and was a turnaround specialist for underperforming branches. And after 7.5 years, I realized, well, the bank is a great opportunity. I felt like that contortionist in the invisible box, and like the rules and structure and how long you have to wait for ideas. And so I left the bank and became an entrepreneur, joined a family business. I did that for 4.5 years. And then one of my customers was a franchise. And so they eventually worked with them and got to know them better. And they recruited me away from my family business. And that was the training company. So I started as selling the franchises. And within a year, I bought my own franchise. A few years later, the founder passed away and we took over the entire company. And we did that for several years. And then FranNet, being the franchise matchmaking company, was one of my lead sources for prospective franchisees. And they started approaching me and saying, why don't you do this franchise? And I sold my interest in that company and came over to the franchise world with FranNet. That was 2002. So I've been in doing this for quite some time. And along the way, got involved with the Canadian Franchise Association, been on the board I'm now in my 16th year. Working with different brands, buying different companies and growing them. I learned a lot from all the different sides of franchising. And that got me to approaching the book with FranNet. I was one of the top franchisees, been consistently in the top 5, been number 1 a couple of times. And as we approached 2018, 2019, there was this nagging question. I guess it's the old trainer in me, Chris, that was, why don't more franchisees do the things that the top franchisees are doing? It wasn't just in FranNet. It was with all the businesses that we see. You have 3 groups of franchisees. Generally, you have the people, the top performers, the top 25%. They embrace the system, grow it, and do really, really exciting things with it. Then you've got the middle 50% that they have good lives, to average to good lives. they're doing good things with the business, but they plateau or they get to a comfort zone. They don't go beyond a certain point. And then you've got the bottom 25 who struggle no matter what. They can't connect the dots. So when I started looking about that question, why don't more people do more with the system? That led me to doing the research for the book. And I focused on what do the top 4% franchisees, and why I chose 4% was the 80-20 of the 80-20, Pareto's Pareto, that generate the vast majority of business. What are their traits and characteristics? What are their skills and alignment? What do they not do that the rest of the franchisees do? And I got it from the franchisor CEO perspective. I interviewed some of the biggest franchisor CEOs on the planet, fast-growing systems. Then I interviewed the top 1 to 4% franchisees. And that's how the book came about. I didn't know if I had a book in me. I just knew I wanted to answer this question. And so that came out, and USA Today rated it as one of the top 10 books for 2024 to grow your business. And I just won the Axiom Bronze Medal for it, Axiom Business Book Award. So it's getting the traction. That's very exciting.
There you go. That's awesome. Congratulations. So in your book, you talk about these 7 drivers of next level growth to help you talked about what the percentages and the levels of people and how they're underperforming in many cases. So in your book, you talk about the 7 drivers of next level growth. Can you give us a tease on a couple of those?
Well, let's start first with, I think the most important driver is the first driver, which is grow a next level mindset. The mindset is so important, and we all have fixed minds. Parts of our lives, we have fixed perspectives of ourselves, and other parts we're open to growth. But we get past a certain point of progress, and the more we learn about something, the less likely we are to want to learn deeper. And we go into this very comfortable place, otherwise known as the comfort zone, and then we just plateau. I was listening to one of your podcasts recently, and you were talking about you launch something, you build it, you get up and going, and then you figure out something else to do. Well, my life story was almost my entire life. I was launch, build, okay, it's on plateau, squirrel, right? And I would lose focus on the business. I kept it running, but I just lost interest in it because it wasn't as challenging. And I did that for a number of things in my career. Then I got into one business, failed at it, lost a lot of money, and I still have a Franet running in the background, and I came back to Franet saying, I have to make this work differently. And this is a fundamental component of the book and helping people grow, is when we get to our comfort zone, we kind of pause. And most people, that middle group, they're at competency in running their businesses, or if they're running a stronger business, they're at proficiency. But they're still at a plateau, Chris. And to move from proficiency to mastery, to go from good performance to brilliant performance, excellence, it takes an entirely different focus on the micro components of the core drivers of the business, going from good to great. And Jim Collins said the enemy of great is the good, right? So how do you stop? That stops people from progressing. So we attack that.
There you go. And sometimes, you go through plateaus in your business, and you need sometimes someone from the outside, or you need a new idea or a new paradigm shift to look at things in a different light. Sometimes I always kind of joke about how it's kind of like a combination of a safe. And, you're sitting there trying to figure out what the right combo is. And, man, as soon as you nail the right numbers and you dial it perfect, it's like the lights go on and it opens and, doors open up and revenue opens up. But, man, sometimes trying to just break through that plateau or that next level makes all the difference in getting there. And so it's hard to do to some people. I mean, and I like how you talk about mindset, because yeah, you do have to have an expandable mind. You have to have a mind that questions things out of the box. Why do we do things this way? Being able to see outside the box is also hard, because you've spent so much time in the box designing maybe what you did. One of the challenges I used to have to do is I would ask my employees, I'm like, why do we do the systems this way in this particular thing? And they'd be like, well, you designed it. And I'm like, why did I design it this way again? And sometimes I would take whole weekends to go tear apart what I designed, and it was funny. I ended up rebuilding it back the same way I did. And I'm like, well, I guess I guess I was right the first time, but there's always a way to improve stuff. There's always a way to tweak it. There's always a way to make stuff better. It's a never-ending cycle in entrepreneurism.
Well, that's a great segue into the second driver, which is awareness.
See, I
Like
set you up.
there's internal awareness, what we have in our own head that ties to the mindset, but there's also internal awareness from what does the owner and the staff see that the customers don't. And so where systems, processes, the facility, all the different elements, if you never pay attention to that, it just goes into that comfort zone and things start deteriorating.
Mm-hmm.
Or just losing potency because the market shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And if the individual and the owner and the employees aren't shifting with it, always focusing on what's the best experience for the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've got the external, which is the customer, and then what are the global forces that you have to navigate through. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're not looking at that on a regular basis, and it's a discipline,
Mm-hmm.
then where do people figure out what the next level of growth is? This was the pattern of top performers. When they get to that comfort zone, the comfort zone is a good place. It's you work hard, you get to a point, you start coasting. It's a rest and reflect, which is a natural part of how we operate as humans.
Mm-hmm.
But after they've reflected a bit, okay, where do we grow next?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where, there's operational, there's leadership, there's the other drivers are specific to verticals of the business, depending on what the core driver is.
Yeah. And you've got to be able to figure these things out. And some people, they need help. I mean, you can't. Sometimes you're just stuck seeing the inside of your business, and you can't see the outside. We were just talking. We just had an entrepreneur on about an hour ago, and she was talking about how they did business one way back in the old days of brick and mortar and retail and malls, and they've had to adapt and adopt to selling online, and it hasn't been an easy transition. And they found it's even more costly. So this is a thing, and it's just one of those things. Business constantly changes on you. Business adapts. There's industry changes. Like we're seeing AI come into thing now. It's throwing everything into a wrench. So it's constant problem solving.
When I think about the importance of innovation, staying in touch with what the customer wants, where the customer is shifting, coming back to the strength of the franchise business model, when it's done right, the franchisor can draw upon the knowledge of all the franchisees, their experiences, plus their own, plus the supplier base, and they can accelerate that innovation far faster than the non-franchise independent, because there's so many eyes looking at it. Just think about AI and how, let's say you've got a leadership team of 20 people at a franchisor. Everybody is looking at dabbling on that. And then there's going to be some people who are specifically tasked to really drive into it. So you've got these financial resources, you've got the operational and talent resources. Instead of being an independent business owners, how do I figure this out on my own?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I think the power of the franchise family and the relationships, that interdependence on that knowledge, that's my sixth driver, really maximizing that.
Mm-hmm. Cultivate the neural network of your business. What is the neural network of your business is one of your tips?
One of my favorite subjects, but so many people don't like to look at, which is KPIs, key performance indicators, tracking and measuring. See, I liken the business body to the human body. We are genetically wired to be aware of our environment. Going back to the awareness driver, there's pleasure sensors and there's pain sensors all throughout our body. Well, the KPIs are the neural network, the pathways. If somebody has got a problem and they're not paying attention to it, and it just keeps on going away, that problem becomes a crisis. So the KPIs are the informative pieces of the puzzle that keep the owner and the team focused on the right things. And you want to look at lead indicators, activity that drives the business, and you want to look at the lag indicators, the things that are how did we do? It's not one or the other. It's the right combination of both, Chris.
There you go. You got to measure the KPIs. That's so important. You gotta measure data. I know people that they're just like, what, I'm supposed to keep track of measuring and recording and stuff? I just can't do business. We had a gentleman on the show who had a spectacular story where he started his first subcontracting business, and he thought he was really smart because he was underbidding most of the jobs,
Mm.
by quite a bit, evidently. And so his business, just started rocking. He started winning all the jobs. He'd overlooked the fact that you need to pay, like employment taxes and stuff like that. And he just assumed that he was making a profit since he was making revenue. Well, turns out he was about $500,000 in the hole.
Great example. Yeah, people think about often that what are the revenue KPIs, and they don't pay attention to some of the more informative pieces. Like with a franchise, you've got system averages. So let's say if it's a production company, if my production percentage is X, and I'm above the what the average is, I've got a higher cost of production. I'm not doing something right in the system, whether it's sales or conversion. Like there's a lot of things you can get lost in data.
Yeah.
So what are the core 6 to 8 that no matter what we have to pay attention to these top performers in any, whether it's a franchise or not, they are on their numbers. They're paying attention to their numbers every day. They've got a dashboard that they look at, and their team informs them of what are the critical things. Okay, so we've got this, great. How can we maximize it? We've got this this challenge. How are we going to address it? Whether it's opportunity or challenge, the KPIs inform the owner and the team.
There you go. Now you built this data and what's inside the book from extensive research and insights from more than 50 top performing franchisees and franchisors across systems of all sizes. Tell us a little bit about that and how you compile that data.
Well, so I got to weave other people's brilliance. I went after going back to that top 1 to 4%. These are people who are running multi-million-dollar businesses at the franchisee level. They're doing a lot of things right. So what were their operational practices? The CEOs, the franchisor CEOs that I interviewed, I wanted to see it from the corporate side. How do they see their top franchisees different from the average franchisees? That's great insight, but it's not on the ground what's driving the results. So that's where I went to the top 1 to 4% franchisees. What are you doing differently? Why are you doing it this way? What are you paying attention to? When I think about the driver on grow your people skills, grow your leadership, one of the common consistent themes that came from all of the top performers was our employees are our most important repeat customer. And one person said more important than our biggest paying customer. Think about that as a mindset and as a strategy. Our staff are our most important repeat customer. Compared to what most entrepreneurs do, our staff are a resource to be consumed, exploited, whatever. We'll pay the minimum. We want to get the most out of them. Money is number 4 on most people's, or number 5 on most people's priority list. They're looking for so much more in their work engagement these days.
Yeah, so much more. So what do you tell us about what you do on your website? You do some consulting, some speaking, and some different things. Tell us about what you offer when people go there as a professional.
So with the book, related to the book, I do keynote speaking, I do workshops for franchisors and independent groups. So helping people break out of their comfort zones. This is really looking at where are they stuck, how to get unstuck. Some people it's operational, some people it's leadership. So we do private workshops, customized workshops for that. On the franchise side, people who are looking at, I want to be in business. I don't know what my options are. I don't know where to look. There's 4,000 franchises in North America. What's the right one?
Yeah.
When I started this business in 2002, there were 400 brokers, and basically the similar competitors to what I do. Now there's 4,000.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of people who are trying to look at how do I find the right business. So it's the understanding the depth of experience and awareness that I bring to the table, Chris. When somebody's going through that search, there's a lot of good businesses out there. There's a lot of good franchises, but if they don't have that skill set to execute the business model, they're going to struggle. And most people, when they buy a franchise, 90% of my clients over the 20 years that I've worked have told us I would have never picked it from a list, and I would have never seen myself in that business. because it's about applying the transferable skills in an area, in an arena that they get to do the similar skills that they're good at, but they also, the things that they're not good at or don't like to do are not core drivers of the business. Success comes when the passion for the work is what drives the business.
Definitely. And loving your work is important. Why is it important to find the right? It seems kind of obvious, but I mean, why is it important to find a franchise that works for you? Hire a broker like yourself to find that, and why is it important to find that perfect fit?
I come back to the seduction that is franchising and entrepreneurship. There's a romance with the idea of being an owner. Well, once you launch a business or buy a franchise, that romance ends. Now you got to run the darn thing. So, and it's hard work, right?
Yeah.
Most people underestimate the amount of work that it is. So getting the right fit, it's important to get the right skills. But what about the right customer? So some people, they only want to have like a one-time customer. I like project management, I like construction or whatever, home improvement. I've got a one-time customer, so I've got to constantly have a business that requires marketing. Whereas if I'm somebody who likes building relationships and going long-term, having long-term relationships, that's a different strategy. It's a different skill set. So you want to make sure the skill set aligns with what the business takes to drive it. But this is where it comes back to purpose. If people aren't connected with their purpose, they're going to try things out. They're going to meander and they'll probably leave the business or close it. When you're buying a franchise, you get to tie that purpose to your passion, but there's also the importance of aligning with what the franchisor's purpose and systems and processes are, because you have to buy into that and drive that along the way. So you've got this extra level of structure, support, and the culture that you want to be part of. See, every business has a culture, and a franchisor, there's great cultures, there's supportive cultures, there's also very isolationist cultures. So there's so many different layers that people don't even think about. And I think this is how they get into trouble, Chris. Yeah. They buy a business because they like it on the surface, but what are the 12 to 14 different criteria that they only think of 4 or 5, and then they have big surprises.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important that you love your business and it's fitted to your personality. You bring up a really good point, and I've talked about this before in the show. Most of the early business that I took on, I didn't love, and I mean, it was more of a necessity thing. And I like being CEO and the innovator and the guy who has to come up with all the stuff. But I always thought of myself an investor in most of my companies, and I never really loved passionately any of them. I love the podcast. I think it's the first time I had anything I really loved, and that I enjoyed doing. And so, people come up to me and be like, "Oh, it's great that you found something you love to do." And I'm like, "I hate this business. I hate this company. I mean, I like the paychecks, but I don't really like what we do. I don't really care. It's just a fucking business. I'm just an investor, and it's a vehicle. And it's a tool." And so, finding something you love, that you're passionate about, that fits what you like doing, that can make all the difference in the world. And then it's not work.
One of the things that you just said, I hear often, people don't look at franchising because they think it's buying themselves a long hours, low paying job.
Oh, really?
And that's what happens when somebody doesn't like the work it takes to drive the business.
No, yeah.
Because they go in, oh my gosh, I don't want to do blank. So the blank being the core drivers. If I buy a business that requires a lot of selling and I don't like prospecting, I've already shot myself in the foot. It's never the franchisor's job to get the franchisee's customers. That's what a big misperception is. It's the franchisor's job to bring business strategies and models. One of them is marketing and business generation. It's the franchisee's job to execute that model. They got to understand what it takes to really execute that well. So that's why when they work with, going back to your question of why use a broker, that's what we do. That's what we help people look at. Where are they best suited and where are they not suited?
There you go. So what haven't we talked about that's covered in your book and some of the work you do to help people find their best franchise?
Well, on the book side, when I look at the 7 drivers, the book meets you where you are. I wrote the book not just be an information tool. Information on its own is useless if you can't apply it. So how do you apply it? So there's workbooks, but there's exercise in the book that it meets you where you are, and then it helps you say, this is what I need to do next. There's a downloadable PDF file at the back of the book that on the QR code that people can make that their workbook. So it's not just, hey, here's some information. I might need to focus on people skills, and then, okay, I've got that worked on. So let me go back. What's the next area? When we look at growth and when people try to do too many things, they end up doing nothing, Chris. So what's the critical 2 or 3 priorities of this is what has to get done in order to get to that next level? And this is going from proficiency to mastery. Once I go from proficiency to mastery, okay, when I'm at mastery at something, that's the time to delegate it and take on new skills instead of locking into that comfort zone and just coasting. That's what top performers do. So the pattern is, once I get to a comfort zone, what's the next growth stage? What's the next growth stage? And they're always looking at those growth catalysts when the pain of doing nothing, remaining in that comfort zone, becomes greater than the pain and sacrifice of making change.
Wow. Yeah.
Growth is hard. Growth is painful, but it's worth it when you embrace it correctly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it can make all the difference. So final thoughts as we go out on people to pick up the book, and how can people on board with you, reach out, find out if you're a good fit, talk with you, consult with you, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, one of the best places is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. The unstoppablefranchisee.com. There's different things you can see there. If people are interested in exploring business ownership, I work right across North America. We have a big team of talent across FranNet, and I can draw on local resources. So regardless of what city, so that would be the frannet.com/G Prenevost.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're based in Colorado or Canada. It's the end of the day here, but you can help anybody in North America, correct?
Yeah, I work with people. The industry is virtual now. I work with people right across North America. I also work with people who want to come to the U.S. or to Canada. I've got an alignment with an immigration consulting firm. So E2 visas, if people want to go into the U.S. or they want to come into Canada, there are certain franchises that really lend to that type of strategy. Not all franchisors want the new immigrant because they want franchisees in a local market with that local market route. So we really depends on where somebody's at. We meet them where they're at. And 2/3 of my clients say, no, this is not the right time. So this is a learning journey, not a buying journey for people, Chris.
Yeah. You definitely want to do the preparedness work up front. And you definitely, I love what you guys are doing where you fit it to the client's personality and what they're driving is, because it does make it's like all the difference in the world, people, when you do something you love, and or at least it fits your personality of what you like. There's nothing. I mean, I've owned companies that make money and they've been multi-million-dollar companies, but sometimes I just hate them. I get other people to run them, and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with that thing. But you know, I mean, they still can be successful, but you just don't love them. There's a couple of them I shut down once my partnerships broke up back in whenever it was. It's in my book. But when that happened, you know, I was like, I don't want to do these businesses anymore. We're going to cut them loose. And sometimes they were high risk, high liability businesses like courier services where there's cars on the road and you can hit people and stuff. So there you go. Give us your final pitch out as we go out for people who are at the book and get in contact with you.
I believe anybody in business can do more with their business than what they're doing. It's a matter of the right mindset. Do I want to grow? The commitment of time and resources and the passion, aligning with the passion. What is your current why? What the reason why somebody bought a business or launched a business, if they're 5 years or longer in, they probably have an entirely different set of whys. And it's the whys that are going to drive them forward when they hit challenges and opportunities. Mm-hmm. So the book helps them do that. And with the FranNet business, I help them figure out what the right business is, what the right arena is that they want to play in.
There you go. It can make all the difference in the world. So thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Gary.
My pleasure. It's been a treat, and I love listening. So people should be listening to this quite often.
Definitely, and doing franchise business is sometimes better than I think a lot of times actually better. I think the stats are there. Like it has a 90% success rate compared to doing idiot stuff like me where you just make stuff up. I remember one person I knew. He owned a successful car dealership. And you'd think there's a lot of money in there, and there usually is. But he was one of the early franchisees of Subway, and so he got a bunch of these Subway things. And what was funny was the Subways he had were making more money than the big car dealership. Like it was just more profitable with the ROI and the margins, and it stacked up. People need to eat, so it's always a good business. So I was just like, what? It makes more money than the car business?
It goes back to the power of the resource space where you've got many minds. It was on one of your recent podcasts. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together.
There you go. Well, we're all going together because you came and enlightened us on the podcast. Thank you very much, Gary.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris. All the best.
There you go. And folks, order up the book wherever fine books are sold. The Unstoppable Franchisee, 7 Drivers of Next Level Growth, April 11th, 2023 by Gary Prenevost. Did I have that right, Gary? It's the end of the day for me. Thanks for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, all this crazy place on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe or else, whatever that means. See you next time.